Westwood One presents America at Night. Here's your host, McGraw Milhaven.
Hey, we got a very busy night for you, but first, let's kick off. President Trump is speaking to the country. Here, let's go to the White House. President Trump is approaching the podium right now.
My fellow Americans, good evening. Let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis 2. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing. They are on the way, and God bless them. These are brave people. We want to God bless those four unbelievable astronauts. As we speak this evening, it's been just 1 month since the United States military began. I have vowed that I would never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This fanatical regime has been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. Their proxies were behind the murder of 241 Americans in the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, the slaughter of hundreds of our service members with roadside bombs. They were involved in the attack on the USS Cole, and they carried out the countless other heinous acts, including the just horrible, bloody atrocities of October 7th in Israel, something that most people have never seen anything like it. This murderous regime also recently killed 45,000 of their own people who were protesting in Iran. 45,000 dead. For these terrorists to have nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat. The most violent and thuggish regime on earth would be free to carry out their campaigns of terror, coercion, conquest, and mass murder from behind a nuclear shield. I will never let that happen, and neither should any of our past presidents. This situation has been going on for 47 years and should have been handled long before I arrived in office. I did many things during my 2 terms in office to stop the quest for nuclear weapons by Iran first, and perhaps most importantly, I killed General Qasem Soleimani in my first term. He was an evil genius, brilliant person, a horrible human being, however, the father of the roadside bomb, and he lived just horrible what he did. Iran would have been perhaps in far better, stronger position. Had he lived, we would have had probably a different conversation tonight. But you know what? We'd still be winning and winning big. And then very importantly, I terminated Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, a disaster. Obama gave them $1.7 billion in cash, green cash, took it out of banks from Virginia, D.C., and Maryland, all the cash they had. He flew it by airplanes in an attempt to buy their respect and loyalty, but it didn't work. They laughed at our president and went on with their mission to have a nuclear bomb. His Iran deal would have led to a colossal arsenal of massive nuclear weapons for Iran, and they would have had them years ago, and they would have used them. It would have been a different world. There would have been no Middle East and no Israel right now, in my opinion, the opinion of a lot of great experts, had I not terminated that terrible deal. And I was so honored to do it. I was so proud to do it. It was so bad right from the beginning. Essentially, I did what no other president was willing to do. They made mistakes, and I am correcting them. My first preference was always the path of diplomacy, yet the regime continued their relentless quest for nuclear weapons and rejected every attempt at an agreement. For this reason, in June, I ordered a strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities, an Operation Midnight Hammer. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently. We totally obliterated those nuclear sites. The regime then sought to rebuild their nuclear program at a totally different location, making clear they had no intention of abandoning their pursuit of nuclear weapons. They were also rapidly building a vast stockpile of conventional ballistic missiles and would soon have had missiles that could reach the American homeland, Europe, and virtually any other place on Earth. Iran's strategy was so obvious. They wanted to produce as many missiles as possible, and they did, with the longest range possible. And they had some weapons that nobody believed they had. We just learned that out. We took them out. We took them all out so that no one would really dare stop them. And their race for a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon like nobody's ever seen before. They were right at the doorstep. For years, everyone has said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but in the end, those are just words if you're not willing to take action when the time comes. As I stated in my announcement of Operation Epic Fury, our objectives are very simple and clear. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's Navy, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their Air Force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it, and tonight I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion. As we celebrate this progress, we think especially of the 13 American warriors who have laid down their lives in this fight to prevent our children from ever having to face a nuclear Iran. Twice this past month, I've traveled to Dover Air Force Base, and it's been something. I wanted to be with those heroes as they return to American soil, and I was with them and their families, their parents, their wives, their husbands. We salute them, and now we must honor them by completing the mission for which they gave their lives. And every single one of the people, their loved ones said, "Please, sir, please finish the job." Every one of them. And we are going to finish the job, and we're going to finish it very fast. We're getting very close. I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form. Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. It would lead to decades of extortion, economic pain, and instability worse than we can ever imagine. The United States has never been better prepared economically to confront this threat. You all know that. We built the strongest economy in history. We're going through it right now, the strongest in history. In 1 year, we've taken a dead and crippled country. I hate to say that, but we were a dead and crippled country after the last administration and made it the hottest country anywhere in the world by far, with no inflation, record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, with 53 all-time record highs in just 1 year. It all positioned us to get rid of a cancer that has long simmered. It's known as the nuclear Iran, and they didn't know what was coming. They've never imagined it. Remember, because of our Drill Baby Drill program, America has plenty of gas. We have so much gas. Under my leadership, we are #1 producer of oil and gas on the planet, without even discussing the millions of barrels that we're getting from Venezuela. Because of the Trump administration's policies, we produce more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Think of that, Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And that number will soon be substantially higher than that. There's no country like us anywhere in the world, and we're in great shape for the future. The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it. We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on. So to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, we had to do it ourselves. I have a suggestion. Number one, buy oil from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked. Go to the Strait and just take it, protect it, use it for yourselves. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally. It'll just open up naturally. They're going to want to be able to sell oil because that's all they have to try and rebuild. It will resume the flowing, and the gas prices will rapidly come back down. Stock prices will rapidly go back up. They haven't come down very much, frankly. They came down a little bit, but they've had some very good days over the last couple of days. We've done actually much better than I thought, but we had to take that little journey to Iran to get rid of this horrible threat. With our historic tax cuts, where people are just now talking about receiving larger refunds than they ever thought possible, they are getting so much more money than they thought. That's from the great, big, beautiful bill. Our economy is strong and improving by the day, and it will soon be roaring back like never before. It will top the levels that it was a month ago. I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable. Yet if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. We are unstoppable as a military force. The nuclear sites that we obliterated with the B-2 bombers have been hit so hard that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, and we have it under intense satellite surveillance and control. If we see them make a move, even a move for it, we'll hit them with missiles very hard again. We have all the cards, they have none. It's very important that we keep this conflict in perspective. American involvement in World War I lasted 1 year, 7 months, and 5 days. World War II lasted for 3 years, 8 months, and 25 days. The Korean War lasted for 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days. The Vietnam War lasted for 19 years, 5 months, and 29 days. Iraq went on for 8 years, 8 months, and 28 days. We are in this military operation so powerful, so brilliant against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated and essentially is really no longer a threat. They were the bully of the Middle East, but they're the bully no longer. This is a true investment in your children and your grandchildren's future. The whole world is watching, and they can't leave the power, strength, and brilliance. They just can't believe what they're seeing. They leave it to your imagination, but they can't believe what they're seeing, the brilliance of the United States military. Tonight, every American can look forward to a day when we are finally free from the wickedness of Iranian aggression and the specter of nuclear blackmail. Because of the actions we have taken, we are on the cusp of ending Iran's sinister threat to America and the world. And I'll tell you, the world is watching. And when we do, when it's all over, the United States will be safer, stronger, more prosperous, and greater than it has ever been before. May God bless the men and women of the United States Armed Forces, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, and good night.
That was President Donald Trump, live from the Oval Office. And just to recap what he said their nuclear, their Navy has been destroyed, their defense systems have been destroyed. He said that they've avoided hitting the oil targets. They've avoided hitting the energy targets, even though it would be easy to do. He said if we did that, it would be harder for them to rebuild. It would be harder for them to come back after the bombing. He said, what else did he say? Another 2 to 3 more weeks. A lot of what he said, I don't know if any of it was breaking news, but the most important things he said, or he didn't say, he didn't mention any troops. He didn't mention what else has to be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. He kept talking about how Iran's capabilities have been destroyed. They've been decimated. And yet he still says that 2 to 3 more weeks. As for the Strait of Hormuz, I don't believe he ever uttered the sentence Strait of Hormuz, but he did mention that those who are so inclined, who get their oil from Iran, could, 1, buy it from us, or 2, help us with the help of the flow of oil. So never mentioned the Strait of Hormuz. But what was interesting to me was he didn't mention anything about ground troops. He didn't mention anything. Now, I certainly wasn't expecting him to come out and say, next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we're going to send in ground troops, obviously. But in terms of policy changes, I don't think he said anything of breaking news. Now, here's what we're going to do for the next hour, or for the next half hour. We're going to take a break at the bottom of the hour. Then we're going to talk to the Deputy Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He is a man who is well-schooled in all of this. He has been an analyst on the Washington Post, the Defense News, the New York Times. You've seen him everywhere. He is a well-respected and well-trusted military man. Deputy Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation of Defense of Democracies. His name is Ryan Brobst, and he's going to join us. We'll get his take on what he heard and what he heard between the lines, what he thinks President Trump meant, and what this means for the ongoing campaign. President Trump did say it is going to last 2 to 3 more weeks. We're on day 32, which is 4 full weeks, if you will. We're into our 5th week now. 2 to 3 more weeks would be 7 to 8 weeks. So almost a full 2 months of bombing Iran, but no word on troops on the ground or anything like that. We do have a busy show for you because next hour we are going to check in with, we got news all over the place. The Artemis 2 launch was today from the Cape, and it was nearly flawless and exciting. I took the 5-year-old in the family, and we sat in the living room, and we watched history as Americans and one Canadian are headed back to the moon. And I know it's pedestrian these days and not very exciting, but it was exciting nonetheless. And we're going to talk to Dr. David Alexander, who joined us before. He's a well-respected man who knows all about what's going on. So he's at Rice University, so we'll have a chance to talk with him. And then also today, the Supreme Court heard arguments on birthright citizenship. And so next hour, we're going to talk to legal expert and dear friend Greg Willard. He's a former White House lawyer under President Ford. He is also currently a St. Louis University Law School professor and probably the best in the business when it comes to explaining the esoteric arguments that you heard today at the Supreme Court. He'll be able to break it down so that you and I can understand exactly what the conversation was, what it means, and he can help read the tea leaves for us and help explain what the argument was with birthright citizenship. That's coming up in hour number 2. And then, of course, hour number 3, we've got phone calls and text messages and all the like. My goal tonight is to get to the end of the show with my voice holding out. I got my my honey, my actual honey. I have my honey, my real honey, not like my honey, just my honey. I got lemons, I got tea, I got all of it, all right here. So I will do my best to croak through tonight's show. I'm just on the cusp, right? I can do it, I can't do it. I'm not losing my voice. I'm kind of losing my voice, but we got so much news and so much stuff to talk about I didn't want to miss tonight. So that's the plan. Stay right there. We'll talk to Ryan Probst, Deputy Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation of Defense of Democracies. And then hour 2, we'll talk about the Artemis launch and the birthright citizenship case that was heard today in front of the Supreme Court. So we are just getting started. President Trump's remarks to the nation. We'll break them down next with a man who was able to read between the lines. America at Night, back in a moment.
This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
All right, the man listened to President Trump's remarks. Ryan Probst is the Deputy Director for the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation of Defense of Democracies. Ryan Probst, welcome to America at Night.
Thanks for having me.
I think the overall headline of the speech was that there was no breaking news, but I guess the biggest news of all was that he said expect 2 to 3 more weeks of the current campaign.
Yes, that's certainly true. President Trump was making the case that operations were going quite well, that we've achieved most of our objectives, that we're going to continue the fight until those objectives are met, and that it'll last another 2 to 3 weeks. That being said, he had also said that we were 2 to 3 weeks away from finishing the conflict 2 to 3 weeks ago. So it leaves a little bit of doubt as to what the actual timeline of this operation was. He also floated the idea that if there was no deal or resolution to the conflict, the United States was going to strike Iran's electric generation plants as well as their oil infrastructure, seemingly in a move to bring the conflict to an end.
Yeah, but in terms of his objectives, it seemed like in one sense he said all of the objectives have been met. The nuclear's been destroyed, the Navy's been destroyed, the defenses have been destroyed. So what else more does the man have to do in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, so I think, one, there are still targets left to strike, for example, other things in the defense industrial base. The Pentagon's going to continue going after Iran's remaining drone and missile launch capability. There's certainly potentially some leadership targets, But the big kind of specter looming over this discussion is the battle for the Strait of Hormuz. And the president did not offer a very positive outlook on that, basically telling the world that other countries who are dependent on oil from the Middle East should, quote, just take it, seemingly indicating that the U.S. Navy is not going to be the one to complete that job.
Yeah, he didn't mention anything about boots on the ground. What can we deduce from that?
Yeah, so there are lots of troops moving to the region, including Marines and Marine Expeditionary Units, elements of the 82nd Airborne Brigade, but he did not make the case for a ground invasion. And I think most Americans know that that could be quite costly, which is likely why the president is reluctant to order it. Could we still see that? Potentially, yes. But I think the probability of that has lowered, given that he didn't mention it in the speech.
Yeah, talk about there was a big sort of buildup around Karg Island. I never quite understood what the reasoning was. Can you explain to us what the reasoning was to take Karg Island and yet leave the Strait of Hormuz closed? And what was the point of that?
Yeah, it was a little bit curious. So just for listeners, Karg Island is a very small island which Iran exported about 90% of its oil through prior to the conflict. The issue is that it's almost at least 350 miles west of the Strait of Hormuz and just off the coast of Iran. So I think the rationale for that would have been to try to prevent Iran from exporting oil. The issues is that, one, you could do that through other means, including targeting the infrastructure there or threatening to seize tankers. And then, two, it would be very difficult to actually take and hold the island because any ships going there would have to transit through the entire Persian Gulf, dodging mines and missiles. The troops would have to take the island. And then if they remain on it, they could be subject to attacks from Iranian ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, and even some types of artillery. So it could be a very costly mission with uncertain results that could be achieved through other means.
Yeah, but the fact that he didn't mention he didn't go there tonight, and he said 2 to 3 more weeks, you're thinking the idea of boots on the ground is a lot less tonight than it was just a couple days ago.
Yeah, I think it's less. I think this would have been the time that the president would have tried to make the case to the American people if he thought that such an operation was really necessary, and the fact that he didn't makes me think it's less likely. That being said, the Trump administration has employed, several means of deception earlier, and that's not a guarantee, but I do think that chance has gone down.
Certainly understandable. I wouldn't put any money on anything the man would or wouldn't do because he says everything and he changes his mind in a moment's notice. But as of now, knowing what we know and listening to what he said, he didn't mention troops on the ground, and I would think there's the rhetoric's changed over the last couple of days. Talk to me about the NATO question, because he seems to be very upset with NATO allies, and even leading up to this speech today has had some pretty interesting comments about our NATO allies.
Yeah, so President Trump has definitely been quite upset with NATO for not getting involved in the conflict, specifically in efforts to open the Strait of Hormuz. That said, at one point he had also said that we don't actually need them and that they should basically stay home, so a little bit of mixed messaging there. It is notable that he didn't mention NATO specifically in the speech, but he did make the point that, one, countries that need oil should buy oil from the U.S. instead, but two, that countries that need it should build up the courage and go take the strait. This isn't necessarily just referring to NATO, though. There are countries in East Asia, such as China, that also import a lot of oil. I somewhat doubt that he was inviting China to send warships to the region, but it could have been interpreted that way.
Yeah. Talk about leaving and declaring victory while the Strait of Hormuz is essentially blocked. You know, that's the Pottery Barn theory, right? You break it, you own it. He broke it, but can he just walk away from it?
would it be theoretically possible? Yes, but it would come at significant cost because all the other nations of the world would now know that Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz when it wants and that the U.S. military is not able to reopen it. This would give Iran tremendous leverage in both deterring a future conflict, but also applying leverage to other countries in the region. For example, it could, threaten to target any Kuwaiti tankers that were transiting the strait if we fail to open it, and that could, apply a lot of pressure on the Kuwaiti government to do things like expel U.S. troops from the region. So there would be very significant costs for the United States just declaring victory and leaving without reopening the Strait of Hormuz.
So in some ways, if he were to leave without the strait being opened, dare I say, has he made Iran stronger in the process?
I don't know about stronger, as Iran's certainly taken very considerable damage that would take many years to rebuild, but we certainly failed to achieve a political victory, and some of Iran's leaders would likely interpret that as they have found a pain point on the United States and can leverage it in the future to deter any other actions. So it would provide, I think, a boost to their deterrence in that area.
Ryan Probst, I know you're a military guy, but I'm going to ask you an oil question anyway, and answer it best you can. There have been stories over the last couple of weeks that Iran has gone after oil refineries, oil infrastructure, and things like that. Even if we were to leave tomorrow, and even if the Strait of Hormuz went back to normal tomorrow, how much of that damage is going to affect the oil markets for weeks, months, or years to come?
So I think the answer is definitely at least months, given some of the portions of oil infrastructure that have been hit. That being said, if we look at how quickly the Russians have been able to repair their oil infrastructure after Ukraine's targeted it, it might not be as high as the years that some have floated. But this is certainly not going to be a next few weeks type thing that oil prices are just going to go back to where they were.
Where you are an expert on is our munitions and their drones. Talk about that for a moment. It seems like they keep reading that we're running out of interceptors and they have an unlimited supply of drones.
Yeah, so there's kind of two things going on here. One is that Iran's ability to launch missiles has declined about 90% since the first few days of the conflict. At the same time, our interceptor stocks and those of our allies and partners have declined as well. So it's kind of a race to see who runs out first. Iran's launches have remained relatively stable for about the past 2 weeks at about 30-ish ballistic missiles and 75-ish drones per day. That being said, there's a lot of, the high-end interceptors are needed to intercept ballistic missiles, but there are many low-cost options to intercept drones. The APKWS-2 laser-guided rocket, which can be fired by fighter jets, can actually cost less than those drones itself. And there's many other options like gun-based systems or even some of the Ukrainian interceptor drones, which they're reportedly sending to the region. So right now it's kind of at a low boil is how I would describe the missile and interceptor war.
How much do we think or know Russia is helping Iran?
So there's many reports that Russia and China are providing intelligence support to Iran, allowing them to target U.S. forces, which is extremely concerning. Russia's also reportedly shared some drone technology. If you recall, Iran originally sent the Shahed 136 drones to Russia. Russia made improvements to them and is now seemingly sending those improvements back. So they're working together to increase both of their military capabilities, which can target the United States and our allies and partners.
Ryan Probst is with us. He serves as Deputy Director for the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He's a leading voice on the technical requirements for modern missile defense and strategic trade-offs. He has served as a research assistant at the Hoover Institute and at Stanford's Center for International Security and Cooperation. You read him and hear him in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many of the outlets out there. One of the go-to guys, Ryan Probst. Overall, the speech not very newsworthy. Again, we'll start where we'll finish where we started. The fact that there wasn't any news, the fact that it was a lot of the same things he's been saying, 2 to 3 weeks more of the bombing campaign, probably the biggest news, and the fact that he didn't mention anything about boots on the ground. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree with that assessment. I think this is seeing perhaps some flagging support for the war and trying to make the case to the American people why it's important to continue the operation.
Yeah. Ryan Probst, thank you for your time on a busy night. Be safe, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. America at Night. Back in a moment.
America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
One quick little note about all this stuff. Earlier in the day, President Trump, speaking to a British newspaper in an interview published this morning, said that he could leave NATO over his frustration with Europe's lack of support for the Iran war, prompting quite a bit of criticism across the political spectrum, even from some in his own party. What's interesting about that and that idea that President Trump could just pull us out of NATO, he's not going to be able to do that because he would need a 2/3 majority from the Congress. Because in his first term, then Senator Marco Rubio sponsored legislation which passed, and I believe signed by President Biden, that you would need 2/3 of the Senate to withdraw from NATO. So his own Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, sponsored legislation to make it harder for President Trump to get out of NATO, which is somewhat comical. From the text line, don't forget the text line. We love the text line, 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. Stay as you are. That's a good thing. That is from New York. Thank you very much. I can only be me. Here's one from Oregon. I used to try and call the previous host often, but I always got through. Tried calling you multiple times, and I've never gotten through. Is it because the color of my skin? Are y'all racist? Yes, we're racist. That's why we don't answer the phone call. Listening from Winnipeg, Canada. Agree about politics and family. Richard. This one's from Illinois, the 815. Not screening phone calls works great. Thank you very much. We do not screen phone calls. What do you think about Rush's new drummer? I have absolutely no thoughts about Rush's new drummer. I didn't even know they got a new drummer. Thank you very much for letting me tell the truth and speak up for your kindness and your decency. Thank you very much. The Canada Air CEO should go on a GoFundMe account and raise money to start a new airline company in Canada. Here's another one. Tiger is most likely addicted to pain pills like Rush Limbaugh and Elvis. It sounds like he's got some problems there. Let's see here. Tell us the truth. Do you think Donald Trump is Looney Tunes? No, I think you're joking. I think he has all of his mental faculties, though there's no doubt that he is certainly aged in office. If you go back and look at him in the first term, much more spry, much more younger looking. Look, the presidency ages everybody. Look at every president from day one to the 8th and final year. I think they all age. Not only do they all age, but I think the job ages them faster than the actual years. So there you go. Sampling of the texts we get here on America at Night. Next hour, we are going to be talking to, did you see that Artemis takeoff tonight? It was pretty special, pretty special. I watched the countdown. I watched at least the last hour of the countdown and then watched it as it rocketed into space. I'm sorry. It's just cool to see human beings on the way to the moon. And I've got a 5-year-old, and we took all of her toys away and said, watch this. This is history. So we're going to talk about that next hour with Dr. David Alexander, a professor from Rice University who is very much involved with this. And then, did you get a chance to hear some of the opinions and the diatribe from some of the experts when it comes to the Birthright citizenship case? We're going to go to our legal expert, and I'd put him up against anybody else in the country. It's, of course, our dear friend, Professor Greg Willard, former White House attorney in the Gerald Ford administration. He's also currently a St. Louis University Law School professor. He will break it all down for us coming up next hour. And then, hour number 3, it's open phones. And my voice is right there. So we're going to need a lot of phone calls to fill it up. If you ever wanted to rant and not have me interrupt you, today could be a good day to call in. We're just getting started. Our executive director is Alex Hinton. Our engineer tonight is Richard Good. I'm McGraw Milhaven, and this is America at Night on Westwood One.
Westwood One presents America at Night. Here's your host, McGraw Milhaven.
Hey, believe it or not, birthright citizenship was debated at the Supreme Court today, and it was a pretty interesting debate. Greg Willard, our legal expert, is going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour to talk about that. But it was another historic day, right? We talked about President Trump and his remarks from the White House. Also today, Artemis 2 launched from the Cape, and it's off to the backside of the moon. Dr. David Alexander is a professor of physics and astronomy and the director of the Rice Space Institute. Dr. David Alexander, welcome back to America at Night.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for the invitation.
So tell me your thoughts as you watched this historic launch day. Everything went off without a hitch?
Yeah, there was a couple of little checks just before launch, but it kind of just were very quickly resolved, and I just kind of wish I was there. It was fantastic. It went just one a beautiful launch.
Yeah. What are they going to do? Tell us what are they doing now? How are they going to get there? And tell us what they do between here and there.
Well, so now they've made it to low Earth orbit, and they've raised the orbit so that they're in a higher orbit, and essentially they'll spend about a day orbiting the Earth. They'll be checking out systems. Obviously, the important systems are what we call ECLIS, environmental control and life support systems. There are humans on board, so those are pretty crucial. And so they'll spend the next 24 hours. They'll obviously sleep some, but they'll spend the next 24 hours or so checking out those systems, the water system, the oxygen carbon dioxide system, the toilets, all these different things that they need to work. And then they'll prepare for what's called the translunar injection. And that's a kind of precise maneuver where you fire your boosters to get into that trajectory to, they won't be orbiting the moon, they'll be swinging around it. But that's what they'll be doing over the course of the next day, and then they'll have I think it's a 4-day trip there and a 4-day trip back. So that's what they're doing in this first period, this first phase of the mission.
The space capsule seems like it's luxurious compared to what we remember in the 1970s.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen, well, even more recently where they've had to, American astronauts were going up to the space station on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. I don't know if you've ever seen a Soyuz spacecraft, but it hurts my knees just to look at it and to think that there was 3 people in there at once. This is a little bit more luxurious. It's still, it might be good for a couple hours, but if you're in there for 10 days, it probably get to seem a little bit small. But certainly it's a bit more commodious than previous capsules.
Why, if we're going to go to the moon, are we just going to go around it once? Why don't we do a couple of loops around the moon and then come back?
Well, because again, that's a different kind of trajectory. It takes a little kind of precision. What they really want to do is use this as a test flight, right? So this isn't a science flight; it's not an exploration flight. So what they're basically trying to do is just make sure that all systems work. And the simplest thing is to stay in Earth orbit, but that doesn't help us too much when it comes to the moon. So the next thing is to basically get into that, see if we can get to the moon, come around, use lunar gravity to bring us back, and then test the re-entry. The launch and re-entry are a couple of the more dangerous aspects of the mission, and they'll be coming in hot, because it's not quite as simple as this, but think of the moon being further away, and therefore when you fall into the Earth, you're falling faster. And so they want to be testing out those systems, have a look at the moon, obviously, test the communications, and then just make sure that the re-entry and all the stuff that needs to work there, that the capsule's performing as well as they're expecting it to do that. So this is also what happened in the Apollo days, the Apollo 8 mission and so on. So this is just testing out the systems without the added adventure or the added danger of trying to land and then, or even just trying to orbit the moon first. So again, it's just a stepwise progress towards that ultimate goal of landing safely on the surface.
Dr. David Alexander with us, professor of physics and astronomy and the director of the Rice Space Station. They keep talking about slingshotting around the moon. Is that just a phrase, or are they really using a quote-unquote slingshot and sort of ricocheting and or bouncing off of the orbit of the moon?
No, it's a phrase that's used essentially. It's just it's using the gravitation of the moon to change your direction and bring you around, and that's this gravitational potential energy, and it's the kind of thing that keeps things in orbit. And so it really is. It's a way of saving fuel, right? So you're not. I often, when I'm trying to explain some of these things, if you watch the movie Gravity, and Sandra Bullock changes orbit using a fire extinguisher, she points where she wants to go and off she goes. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because everything in space is moving. So it's a little bit more like, if you're trying to jump between cars in an action movie and you're moving at the same, you have to get to the same speed and then you can jump. So it's basically trying to match the motions of the bodies, get that orbit, and then it's gravity that controls that. So what it does is it allows you to get close enough to the moon so that the gravity of the moon grabs you, but not enough to pull you to the surface, but enough to bring you around, and then you can get that entry into that sling and then the exit out of it. It's not really a slingshot where you're bouncing off of stuff or being thrown around, but it is essentially, think about a slingshot where you would hold the rocket, the end of the rope, and you keep it in place by swinging it around. That's what's happening. So the spacecraft will come in at some angle, be grabbed by the gravity of the moon, come around it, and then come out at the kind of re-entry, or the angle that gets it back to the Earth at the right configuration for re-entry. So
and then they will
gravity doing the work.
And they will fire the rockets and then sort of push themselves away from the moon using that, for lack of a better scientific term, centrifugal force to then propel them back to Earth.
Right. So those are so if they've got the trajectory correct, which there's a lot of clever people doing this, then they'll come in at the right angle to come out at the right angle, and then what they use is the rockets to adjust the trajectory to finesse it basically. But the bulk of that work will be done by that lunar gravity and the mathematics that gets you going in at the right point. This is why what they call the translunar injection burn, the thing they'll do sometime tomorrow, that has to be precise. It has to be at the right time at the right location for the right amount of time, and that puts you into that trajectory. And you can make some adjustments on the way. if you're a little bit off, but that's the plan, is you get the entry point right that gives you the exit point correctly, and then the rest is kind of finessing it and making sure that you're right on the money.
We learned this in Apollo. Did we lose this expertise? Are we rediscovering it? Is it new science? Is it new technology? Why are we doing this again?
Well, so there's a difference now. I mean, I think obviously, this isn't about who can get first to the moon, because we've already done that. But what the purpose for doing it back in the 60s and early 70s was, a very particular purpose, right? President Kennedy came to Rice University and gave the speech about why we're going to do it and how we're going to do it. But it really was to make a point against, in that Cold War period where we're, looking at the Soviet Union. And so the mission was to do it a few times to show that it wasn't just a lucky break. But the visits were very short, right? A couple of days here and a couple of days there, a little bit of science. They visited the equatorial regions of the moon and the near side of the moon so that there was the communications. This time what we're trying to do is pave the way for essentially a regular trip. Pave the way so that we can actually have a continued and sustainable presence at the moon, to do the science, to help support future trips to potentially to Mars, and potentially even to use like water on the moon to help support some of the space activities back in Earth orbit. So it's a very different purpose. And of course, we haven't done this for a while. I mean, it's a kind of, this is a different kind of rocket. We have a little bit more risk aversion these days, so we want to make sure there's multiple redundancies. And it's even then, I mean, everything, it's always hard. And so this is where you just have to be really careful. But what it's doing is it's setting the new direction for humans to explore space, as opposed to, let's show that we can do it and then we're done. This is going to be a longer term thing.
So one of the most famous pictures the world has ever created was the picture of the Earth rising from the moon as they came around the backside of the moon. Is there any way they're going to film that, send that back to America, or send that back to Earth? Is there going to be any video that we can actually watch that on our HD TV?
Yeah, I don't actually know if they're going to do it live, but they might do. It depends on the time of day and so on. Of course, when they go around the moon, we're out of contact with them until they come back out the other side. So, but I think that's the plan. And they will be going a little bit higher. I mean, the Apollo astronauts were about 100 miles or so above the surface. These guys will be about 4,000 miles. So they'll be going the furthest any human has gone, from the Earth. And so those views will be of the moon itself will be quite spectacular, and I'm sure they'll be looking for the Earth on their way around that moon. So I'm really expecting to see some really cool pictures again. We'll see that probably in about 5 days.
Yeah, Dr. David Alexander, a couple more minutes with you. You're a professor of physics and astronomy and the director of the Rice Space Institute, and you've been nice enough to join us a couple of times because this is really science fiction. We are living in the future. I have a very pedestrian question, and I apologize for the simplistic question, but they kept talking about how these astronauts are leaving Earth orbit and entering the moon's orbit, and yet the moon is also in Earth's orbit. So I'm a little confused. Are they really leaving Earth's orbit, or are they not leaving Earth's orbit?
Well, they are leaving Earth's orbit, and so essentially, if it's a little bit of like a tug of war, right? If you have two equally balanced teams pulling on the rope, then the flag stays in the middle. And then when you have something like the moon, which is smaller than the Earth, and then the balance is a little bit closer to the bigger mass, the Earth. But once you leave that influence of the Earth, the gravity falls off with distance. I'm sorry for being the professor here, but
no, please.
But the gravity falls off with distance from both the moon and from the Earth, and the moon's gravity is about a sixth of that of the Earth. But there is a point where you're close enough to the moon and far enough away from the Earth that the lunar gravity is stronger than the Earth's gravity. Once that happens, particularly if you've got the right trajectory, you then become kind of a prisoner of the moon, right? That's the orbit around the moon. And the Earth is still there, and it's kind of messing with your orbit a little bit. It's giving you the wobbles every so often. But the dominant force is coming from the moon. Then when you do a burn to come out of that, you're in free space. And then, you get to the Earth, and then, the Earth's gravity takes charge. Because remember, the moon is going around the Earth, but the Earth and the moon are going around the sun. And so, again, it's what is the local force of gravity that's dominant. And for the moon, that's the Earth. And then for a spacecraft around the moon, it's the moon. And you can think about things orbiting Mars in the same way, or orbiting Jupiter in the same way.
Yeah,
it's just the local gravity that matters.
Yeah, I wish you were my professor of physics and astronomy. Maybe I would have done better back in the day.
Be careful, the finals are coming up.
Dr. David Alexander, professor of physics and astronomy. I have about 1 minute. Splashdown. What can we expect? What are we going to be able to see when this happens 10 days from now?
Well, hopefully it won't be that exciting. Hopefully they'll make it through the re-entry pattern obviously there'll be a lot of heat generated. That's what the heat shields are for. And hopefully it will be interest-free. Hopefully they'll make it back safely, and the parachutes will open, and they'll land with a gentle bump in the Pacific and be picked up by the Navy. And I think, it may sound exciting to blow stuff up and to crash into stuff, but we really want this to be as boring as possible, because that means that we can do it, and we can do it again.
Yeah. Dr. David Alexander, thank you very much for joining us on a very historic day. Good luck to you, and we look forward to talking to you down the road.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, McGraw.
You got it. America at Night. Back in a moment.
America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
Man, there's a ton of news that happened today. President Trump spoke to the nation, and he said the U.S. objectives in Iran are very simple and clear. He said, we are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. He also said the fighting would go on to 2 or 3 more weeks. He said that 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's the reaction around the world. Asian markets, the stock markets fell in Asia. Let's see here. Japan's Nikkei average fell 1.4%. South Korea's dropped 2.6%. Hong Kong's index lost 0.8%. Dow futures are down, let me see here, 410 points. The S&P futures are down 1%, and the NASDAQ futures are down, 1.2% on the news. So the market, at least initially, not very receptive to his comments. Also news today, the debate of who gets to be a United States citizen was on full display at the Supreme Court. President Trump was there to hear some of it, and then at some point he walked out. Greg Willard is our legal analyst, former White House attorney for Gerald Ford, current St. Louis University Law School professor, also currently one heck of a nice gentleman. He is going to join us after the break here at the bottom of the hour to explain exactly what everything happened to what happened today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You've heard analysis from other people, but you haven't heard the best. And for years, I've been saying Greg Willard is the best there is, better than anybody else on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, News Nation. God love them. God respect all of them. No one breaks it down better than my guy, Greg Willard. And we are going to, he's going to join us next. And then, of course, in hour number 3, open phones. As a report for my voice, I don't know, this green tea with half a gallon of honey and 3 cubes of lemon. Colds. Who needs them? All right, stay right there. Greg Willard right around the corner. Also, the text line's open. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. Can't read them all, but I sure do like... I can't read them all on the air. Let me say that. I do read them all. I enjoy many of them. America at Night. Back in a moment.
You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Relax. You're listening to America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
He's the best in the business. He's also one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. He was a White House attorney in the Gerald Ford administration. He is now a current St. Louis University Law School professor. He's Greg Willard, and he joins us for a couple minutes. Greg, welcome back to the show, my friend.
McGraw, good evening to you, my friend. Good to be with you.
What stood out to you most about today's arguments?
I think a couple of things. One sort of permeated the entire argument, and then the second, I think, will turn out to be pretty significant, but it wasn't apparent probably to a lot of our listeners. In terms of what permeated the argument was all 9 justices and both of the lawyers spent probably the better part of the argument fighting over one word or a variation of that word, and that word is not in the constitutional provision that was at issue, specifically the word domicile. What this all stems from, McGraw, is in large part the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and in particular 19 words in that amendment. All persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. That's it. That's it. The argument, as I say, was permeated by this notion of domicile as somehow fulfilling that requirement that I just read, which was, in addition to being born in the United States, the person, the baby, has to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The part that I think was not manifest to everyone, but I think when the votes are finally counted, I think it could be very important. And that is, Congress has the power to, by statute, to set up additional pathways to citizenship. And Congress has the power to enact, as we are witnessing right now with the government shutdown and ICE, immigration laws. Well, in 1952, Congress enacted a statute within which was a citizenship provision. And guess what, McGraw? The same 19 words that I just read to you from the Constitution are verbatim in that 1952 statute. A lot of people may say, oh, I guess it'll just be sort of a doubling down, depending on which way the court goes. And I don't think so. And as you know, I don't like to predict where the Supreme Court is going to go on a particular case, but I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think that 2 things. I think number one, President Trump is going to lose, just as he lost in all of the courts leading up to this morning that considered it ruled against him. But I think it is very likely, if not highly likely, McGraw, that some of the justices that rule against him will rule on the 14th Amendment grounds, and 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 justices will say, no, we're not going to go to the constitutional grounds. We're going to rely on the statute. We lawyers like to call that constitutional avoidance. And that they will rely on the same 19 words, but just rely on that 1952 statute. So you bundle it all up. It was a fascinating day, the first time in United States history that a sitting president has ever attended an oral argument. But the argument itself was robust. I wouldn't say rambunctious, but it was robust. And I think, having listened to the argument, I've read many of the briefs. I think, on balance, it's a good thing. If you were to look at the win, place, and show window tomorrow, you'd see me at all three, McGraw, betting that the president is going to lose on birthright citizenship.
Are you say? I'm going to rephrase what you said in a much more rudimentary way, but just so I understand it, you think the justices are going to say something along the lines of, "Hey, the Congress passed the same thing. Have the Congress pass something different, and then bring that to us, and we'll let you know if it's constitutional"?
Halfway. I'm halfway there with you, McGraw. I think it's an easy path if the conclusion is the president does not have this power to eliminate birthright citizenship in the illegal immigration space. And the reason it's an easy path is for the constitutional question, the 14th Amendment, the court has to figure out, well, what the heck did the Congress mean when it passed the 14th Amendment in 1868? And what did the states understand? What was the public meaning? Well, if in contrast they rely on the 1952 statute, between 1868 and 1952, there were hundreds of thousands, dare I say millions, of our fellow American citizens and their forebears who were born here from parents who were perhaps temporarily here. But the point being that it's not just the words on the paper in 1952. There's a public meaning that had grown up over nearly 90 years. And I think if you're a textualist, for example, you're looking at the text and the public meaning in 1952, that's an easier path. Now, as to your second point, that going down that path is sort of a hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod to the Congress to try to abolish birthright citizenship by legislation. No, I don't think that's an invitation that they would be doing at all. Rather, they would be the justices who rely on the 52 statute would be going down a path which is rather common in Supreme Court jurisprudence of avoiding deciding a constitutional issue if they can decide it as a statutory legislative issue, and I think several justices are going to go that way.
We should have played a drinking game with the word domicile, because I'm with you. It was said quite often today, and I looked it up, and the formal definition is of a country that a person treats as their permanent home. And they talked a lot about Native Americans and things like that. But there are also citizens who have dual citizenship. So that I don't know if that was brought up, but does somebody with dual citizenship not have a right to have a child who's an American citizen?
Well, that there are dual citizenship, and that did not come up, the question of dual citizenship. I think where President Trump's lawyer, Solicitor General John Sauer, had a very difficult time, among several, but this was one of the more difficult times, he was focusing on this domicile requirement, and that you had to comply with the immigration laws. And if you're not in compliance with the immigration laws, then you're not, to quote the phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And Justice Gorsuch pointed out to Mr. Sauer that in 1868, the United States did not have immigration laws in the sense of limiting entry into the country like we do today. So the idea that a couple would come down from Canada for a period of time and their child would be born, well, that child, I think, by all accounts, would be an American citizen. And the point that Gorsuch was making to Mr. Trump's lawyer was, well, wait a second. They weren't in compliance with these laws that you talk about, that they have to establish domicile and all, because there was no such thing in 1868. How can we graft on in 2026 a domicile requirement that did not exist when the 14th Amendment was enacted and ratified? Not surprisingly, Mr. Sauer did not have a direct response to satisfy Justice Gorsuch.
How would one go about fixing birth tourism? I don't think anybody's in favor of abusing the system and coming to America to take a vacation, to have your baby here, to then become an American citizen. So if you can't, if the Supreme Court's not going to solve this problem, how do you solve the problem?
If you accept the fact, McGraw, that the 14th Amendment and the 52 statute talks about a person, that's the subject of the sentence, born, that's the verb. So that's the baby. It doesn't, nowhere in those 19 words is parent, domicile, mother, father, allegiance, status. It's not there. So I think the people who support President Trump on this issue are not going to like what I have to say about it. But I think the train may have left the station as far as the 14th Amendment and somehow tinkering, legislatively or otherwise, tinkering with that baby's citizenship status, short of passing another constitutional amendment to nullify that part of the 14th Amendment, and the sun's going to rise in the west before that happens. But to answer your question, if the problem is the 500 businesses that Mr. Sauer reported today at the oral argument, 500 businesses in China, and their business model is they arrange for tourist visas for young pregnant mothers to come to the United States to have their babies and go back. If that is what you as a matter of policy you want to get at, well, then you need to focus the statute not at the birth status of the baby. You need to have rather harsh, again, if this is what the proponents of President Trump's position are, they would have to have their representatives and senators enact harsh legislation, harsh penalties for anyone who engages in this anchor baby tourist visa business, scam, operation, whatever term you want to use. I think that's where the legislative fix, and it's only a partial fix, McGraw, I think it's got to be focused on the mother, or maybe the mother and father, but certainly the mother.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, I just don't think in terms of limiting that person's right to citizenship under the 14th Amendment, I just don't think that's going to get constitutional traction.
Greg Willard, I want to go rogue with you. I got about 3.5 minutes, so I'm going to ask you to keep your question short, and I'm going to ask you a brilliant question and give you 30 seconds to respond. But yesterday, they had the 8-1 decision striking down the Colorado law saying conversion therapy. The law said you weren't allowed to promote and or administer conversion therapy, and the justices ruled 8-1 that that's against the free speech of the doctor. Okay.
Yes.
How does that affect trans therapy or doctors who perform trans medicine or trans therapy and their free speech rights? Is that encompassing the same thing?
No. You put a clause there at the end that kind of threw me, but let me come back. So the 8 yesterday ruled, as you correctly said, that the First Amendment free speech rights of the therapist in Colorado were violated by the Colorado statute, and specifically by the test that the lower court applied. And the lower court applied a very low test as to the constitutionality, and the Supreme Court said that's wrong. You should have applied a much stricter scrutiny, a higher level of scrutiny. And therefore, the court ruled in favor of the therapist. If a physician wants to administer pharmaceuticals or engage in surgical procedures as to a transgender individual, that has zero First Amendment implications. Zero, McGraw. So the two scenarios are very different. It's only when what the therapist, the physician, the counselor, it's only when their treatment, their therapy involves speech.
Got it.
Expression. And that was the basis upon which the court ruled yesterday, 8-1, in favor of the therapist.
Interesting. What other cases are you looking at? What's the big headline in the next couple of weeks or months when it comes to the Supreme Court?
Well, I think probably the one that will justifiably get the most attention, there's a series of cases as to the authority of a president to fire certain senior officials in the government. One of the commissioners of the Federal Trade Commission, the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. And depending on how the court comes out on that, could have profound implications in the decades ahead as to how those, what we have always thought since 8th grade civics class, were independent agencies in our federal government. Depending on how the court goes, that 90-year tradition may get thrown out the window. Then again, the court may rule that it is constitutional to limit the president's firing power. We'll just have to see. But either way, I guess to put it this way, McGraw, either way the court comes out, the impact will be significant, and we all need to watch for it.
Greg Willard, keep your phone on. We will call you as needed. St. Louis University's law school professor and one heck of a nice gentleman, Greg Willard. Greg, thanks for checking in. Have a good night.
Great to be with you. Happy Easter, my friend.
Happy Easter to you, too. America at Night, back in a moment.
From the heart of America, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
All right, we're done. Greg Willard. He's one of the good ones. He's one of the great ones. We are officially out of time. Text and messages and phone calls all next hour. And if you ever wanted to rant and not get cut off, now is a pretty good time because my voice is barely going to make it through one more hour. So the chances of you getting on and me letting you rant, not a bad idea. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. I got to save my voice. So it might be a good time to call in and take over the show, if you know what I mean. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. Open phones, open text lines, lots of news. We had President's remarks. We had Birthright Citizenship. We had the Artemis 2 takeoff. And those were just the breaking news. Our executive director tonight is Alex Shinton. Our engineer tonight is Richard Good. I'm McGraw Milhaven, and this is America at Night on Westwood One.
Westwood One presents America at Night. Here's your host, McGraw Milhaven.
Oh, and by the way, if that's not enough, President Trump spoke to the nation today about the bombing in Iran. 2 to 3 more weeks, he said, but he's also said that 2 to 3 weeks ago, He said Iran has been decimated, their navy's been decimated, their defenses have been decimated, but 2 or 3 more weeks. And hinted, didn't say much, but hinted that if the Strait of Hormuz doesn't open up in 2 to 3 weeks, it's on somebody else's dime. Hinted at it, didn't really say that. I'm sort of somewhat parsing his words and reading between the lines. So you had that story tonight. You had the Birthright citizenship story tonight, that being debated in the Supreme Court. You also had the Artemis 2 rocket takeoff for the moon. And the longest partial government shutdown is on course to end after Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, caved. He called that Senate plan a joke just 5 days ago. Now it looks like Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune will pass that bipartisan bill that came out of the Senate last week. So it looks like Republicans have caved to the Republicans in the Senate. And it looks like that bipartisan bill that passed in the Senate is going to pass. Speaker Johnson called that bill what a joke last week. And I guess he's going to let it go through and pass the House of Representatives. And there you go. The longest partial government shutdown will be over. Still, so that means TSA agents will get paid. But ICE and the Department of Homeland Security and some of those other ones, that I guess will continue to be funded by the big, beautiful bill. And still the Democrats held their objections to that. So that's going on as well. Busy day in terms of news. All right, phone numbers are as follows. 1-844-2-McGraw. 1-844-262-4729. No joke. My voice is not going to hold out for the rest of the hour. So if you are so inclined to call, now might be a good time. If you were a little apprehensive that maybe I might cut you off, which I try not to do. I know I struggle at that. I try and give everybody equal amount of time. And once you start repeating, I got to jump in because I got to sort of keep the conversation moving along. But it's a split-second decision on the fly, so I do what I can. I am human. But if you call, the more you talk, the less I have to talk. And then that way you can get what you want said. And I probably won't cut you off tonight. I'll probably be a little longer before I cut you off. At least I'll try. I promise. 1-844-2-McGraw. 1-844-262-4729. Let's go to those phones. Paul in Boise, Idaho. Thanks for holding on. Welcome to America at Night.
Thank you. Try chloroseptic. Sometimes that works pretty good on a sore throat.
Yeah, I've tried it all.
Let's see. I would say 1969, Mrs. Townsend's room, 5th grade class. Had a huge crush on her because she looked so much like my mother. Really beautiful, dark brunette hair, tall, just nice as could be. And man, I have a crush on her. Just a sweet lady.
All right. And, is there a reason why you're telling me this?
Yeah, because that's where I saw the moon landing for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Television in the classroom. She wheeled it out on one of those cart with wheels and plugged it in. But what we saw mostly was snow. You know, when you had a bad picture on television back in those days, black and white.
It was black and white. Yeah.
So I remember that still. It's kind of funny. You should mention that, but yeah, and I would say today's speech by Trump is not one of his greatest hits, but it was effective.
Why do you think it was not one of his greatest hits?
Oh, I think that he struggles sometimes to write a speech, and he kind of wings it, and I think that's where his fault is most of the time when you have a Trump speech that doesn't resonate and make you talk about it to your neighbor and everybody else.
Yeah, well, there was nothing new to it. I mean, it was all the same things he had said. Maybe it was a little more eloquent. He was reading off the teleprompter, and no expert, but I think he did, go off script a couple of times. But at least that's what I sort of sensed. But I don't think there was any new news there. I was expecting him to say something about NATO or troops or retreating or escalating or de-escalating or something. But there was no new directive, no new anything other than we've been here 32 days and we're going to be here another 2 to 3 weeks. And that's what he said two to 3 weeks ago.
And you hit the nail on the head as far as NATO and Trump's decision. It's also a decision that involves the Senate.
Yeah.
And you can't just say, I'm sorry, but we don't want you around here anymore. Doesn't work quite that way, but I think they're going to wait until the king comes to visit the United States. I think that's what they're going to do.
Well, it's interesting because he didn't talk about, right, Paul, thanks for the phone call. He didn't talk about troops. He didn't talk about going in and abstracting the uranium. He didn't talk about regime change. He didn't talk about, what was the other thing he didn't talk about? He didn't talk about unconditional surrender. So if it's decimated and he's got 2 to 3 more weeks, what are we still doing? What's going to be done in 2 to 3 weeks? What more needs to be done if it is decimated and he's made the world safe from Iran? And again, no comments on the Strait of Hormuz and the stranglehold that Iran continues to hold on the Strait of Hormuz. Let's go to Scott. Scott is in St. Louis. Scott, welcome to America at Night.
Yeah, I don't know if he said it in the speech, but I think he said it to Reuters over the phone that the uranium is buried deep underground, so he's not worried about it, and we're just going to watch it by satellite. And
well, that's what he said 6 months ago.
Okay, yeah, because Van Jones pointed out, that's we were watching by satellite before he decided to bomb them. So
Right.
I would say and Iran is, they're still sending lots of missiles. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, and I think it may be closed right up until Election Day.
Well, who knows? But, he said, I heard him say the other day or read the other day that he said it'll take 15 to 20 years to reconstitute the nuclear war program. But then he bombed him 6 months ago. He said it was obliterated. But then he said they had reconstituted it to the point where they could reach Europe. So he's kind of saying everything all at once, all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know what to say now on the Supreme Court thing. Apparently that phrase, the jurisdiction thereof, it comes from common law in England. And it basically means, if your baby is born here in the United States, he or she is a citizen.
Right.
Automatically. At least that's what I read. And
well, I always thought it was meant like a diplomat who's here, who's not subject to our laws, has a baby. That baby is not necessarily, or like Ted Cruz, who I believe was born in Canada, right? I think his father was a diplomat. He was born in Canada, but he's still an American citizen because he's subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? He was an American citizen in Germany or in Canada, so he's an American citizen. Or
that's what it means. Okay.
Yeah, or a John McCain, I believe, who was born in Panama when his father was stationed in Panama, right? He's still an American citizen, could still become president of the United States because he's an American citizen born on American soil, even though he wasn't born on American soil, right? Sort of like Ted Cruz. That's what I always thought it meant. And I'm with Greg Willard. I never heard this word domicile, and I never read it anywhere in the Constitution until this guy talked about it ad nauseum today.
Yeah, and John Sauer, I think he is very good at double talk.
He is well respected in the legal community. He is considered one of the. I know Greg Willard is a very, very highly respected and very Greg Willard has told me about him years ago on one case. He said, "Oh, if this John Sauer is running things, that's going to be a buttoned up case." So he gets a lot of respect in legal circles. Scott, thanks for the phone call. Hey, I got a break. We got a couple lines open for you right now. Text line is flowing. 1-844-2-McGraw. 1-844-262-4729. America at Night. Back in a moment.
Join the conversation. Call 844-2-McGraw. America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. This is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
Busy night. Looks like the shutdown is about to end. The House Republicans caved to the Senate Republicans in the shutdown news. You had the Birthright Citizenship debate going on in the Supreme Court. You had Artemis 2 take off from Cape Canaveral. And you had President's speech remarks of the country tonight. Just some of the things that are going on out there. Let's go to Danny and Rolla. Danny, welcome to America at Night.
One of the things that I think's very odd is that nobody seems to understand how long World War I lasted, World War II lasted, Korea, or Vietnam. And the original plan was 4 to 6 weeks. Well, we're just past 4 weeks. So I'm really kind of at a loss as to why anybody's criticizing Trump because...
Well, who's criticizing him?
Well, you've said many times tonight, well, he said 2 to 3 weeks. Well, he said that 2 to 3 weeks ago.
He did.
So, yeah, but you're...
That's not criticizing him.
If it's not giving him congratulations.
Well, the job's not done yet. I mean, I don't congratulate him on what?
Well, if you can go in and do a major operation and get it done in less than 6 months, that's huge.
Okay, but I don't think the job is done because before the war started, the Strait of Hormuz was open. We're now 4 weeks into this, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. So yes, he's decimated the country, but he can't open up the Strait of Hormuz. So we've got a huge problem here.
We can, but the thing about it is, and this is also part of the criticism of NATO, we don't get our oil from the Strait of Hormuz. None of our oil comes through that strait. Now, when he asks other countries...
That's hold on a second. Yes, that's well established. But the price of a barrel of oil is determined in part by what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz.
We had this conversation when I said about the pie. That was why.
That. But... yes, but NATO is a defensive organization, and he didn't consult with NATO going in. He has been very critical of NATO, hasn't been very rude to NATO and their allies, wanted to go alone, didn't ask for any help, and now is demanding help from NATO. It's a kind of a tough road he's laid out for himself, don't you think?
Hold on, brother. He's not asking for help. All he's saying is if this is your fight, then you should fight it. We'll back you up. But don't expect us, like you have said many times, don't expect us to be the world's police.
Hold on a second. But are we the world's police? Now you're arguing we shouldn't be the world's policeman. I mean, so you're arguing we shouldn't have gone in.
No. I'm not saying. Everybody else expects us to be the world's police. We shouldn't, and I'm not, and I never have argued that we should. This is the problem with NATO for the last 40 years. We've spent, and there was agreement of, I believe it was 2% GDP per country.
Okay, yeah, all of that is true. All of that is true.
And none of them have ever stood up.
Well, they have now increased their military spending, and we can all agree that NATO's not perfect, and there are countries that didn't live up to that, and they are now starting to spend more on their defense systems. But with all that being said, they did come to our defense after 9/11, and in some respects, the argument the last 4 weeks has been, oh my goodness, President Trump had to do this to make it safe for the world. And what about those poor innocent Iranians who are being killed in the streets? We need to go in and protect them. That has been part of the argument for the last 4 weeks. And I have said, are we now the world's policemen? Because there's a lot of other places we can go into. We can go into North Korea. We can go into all sorts of other places. So, Danny, I got to go. I got to go. I would give you the last word, but I'm short on time. Call back and I'll give you the last word and try and save my voice. Jeff in Wilmington, North Carolina. Tony in Montreal. Hang tight. We'll get to y'all. Plus text lines 1-844-2-McGraw or 1-844-262-4729. America at Night. Stay right there. Back in a moment.
Coming to you from the heart of the nation, this is America at Night with McGraw Milhaven. Welcome back to America at Night. Call now, 844-262-4729. That's 844-2-McGraw.
All right, yes, that's the phone number, 1-844-2-McGraw, M-C-G-R-A-W, 1-844-262-4729. Hey, before we go to the phones, we had a Jeff on the line. Jeff was on the line from Wilmington, North Carolina, and he was chastising Alex was, quote-unquote, screening the phone call. It's a hard habit to break, Jeff. Alex likes to, hey, what are you guys talking about? That doesn't mean I don't take them in the order. I told Alex numerous times you don't have to do that, but Alex is so well-trained and schooled that he just does it out of habit. So no offense. Jeff, call back and we'll get you up on the show. Tony in Montreal, welcome to America at Night. Tony, thanks for joining us.
How you doing?
Hanging in there. Voice is probably going to make it to the end of the show.
I missed the screening session, and I'll have to review it on the podcast. But I'm sitting in a gas station here, and I'm listening to your Iran commentary, not yours, but the callers, and it's $1.90.9, which is $1.91 a liter, and 4.5 liters makes 1 imperial gallon, which is $8.67 a gallon. $8.67, just a shade under $9 a gallon. So when I listened to your original, when we first talked about this a while back, one of your callers from Louisiana said that my analogy to Vietnam was incorrect. You quickly said there were similarities between Iran, because Iran is obtaining assistance in the drone industry from Russia. China is helping Iran in other ways, because he was saying that Vietnam had, satellite assistance by China and other people, and it wasn't similar. Well, it's becoming quite similar because, again, what you said today in your commentary seem to be well trained in your barroom tactics, because you make a damn good lawyer. I would think you know how to pick a point and go after a faiblesse, as we say in French, a feeble point or a weak point. But because, as you said, Trump is, even though I support Trump, I'm getting nervous about this Iran thing, because it is affecting us. I thought it was the same reason that they went into Vietnam, to help the people that were subjugated by communism. That was the idea back then. Today, they're subjugated by the Ayatollahs and their regime, which are killing people because they don't allow democracy and freedom of speech. Then misogyny is all over the place, all kinds of crazy things that we don't accept in the West. And now you're making a deal with the beheaded nephew of the former beheadeds, and now you're making deals with them and saying that they're more realistically available to make deals with the United States. I find that weird, because if I was if Iran said to me, death to Canada for 55 years or 48 years, death to my allies, I would tend to think that everybody in that government should be eliminated, period. And then start from scratch and let the people from that. Because, it's not just the cost of gas. I'm willing to absorb the cost of gas if we're going to save the Iranian people. And I think that the American people equally say to themselves, we want to save and free those people from this dictatorship. And that's what it means to me. When you're a world power, you're really not a police force. You just, by osmosis or by absence of anybody else that has any backbone, you go in, the Americans go in, and a lot of times, 99% of the time, the Canadian Army and the Canadian people have supported that. And you could look at the history
let me jump in here, Tony, because you brought up some really interesting points. But by going, if that was the objective, was to bring democracy to the Iranian people, which was sort of insinuated, if not said, by some people in the administration at some point over the last 4 weeks. That's the definition of nation building. That is the definition of being the world's policeman.
Correct.
Yes, and I don't know when you say though that phrase, oh, nation building, world's policeman, they're against it. But when you say we're going in to save the people of Iran, they're for it. So I don't know if that was the intended goal. I don't know if regime change was the intended goal. I don't know if, I guess, the degrading their nuclear capabilities was one of their goals, but that was already degraded. Here's the bottom line, though. And of course, I'm rooting for Donald Trump. I'm rooting for America. I want this to be over yesterday. I don't want anybody else to die. I don't want Iranians to die. I don't want Kuwaitis to die. I don't want Americans to die. I don't want anybody to die. But if he leaves Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is still controlled by Iran, that's a dangerous game to play, because he's kind of signaling, I can't open it up, or I don't want to pay the price to open it up. And he's signaling to Iran that they can still sort of poke us and prod us. And so that's a dangerous game to play. Just leave and break it and not fix it and make it worse off than when he went in. That's a dangerous place to be in.
It's like the Afghanistan withdrawal, when Biden just withdrew and left himself open to leaving all of the armaments in Afghanistan, and a number of people were killed. Look, you're absolutely right. The Iranians are malicious. I'm talking about the top Ayatollah, the brain trust that's running that country. Malicious. They're going to come after your weak point. And like the Straits of Hormuz, that is the Achilles heel, and they know it. But if you're not willing to come in and put your money where your mouth is, say we're going to pull out now, well, they're going to make sure that Strait of Hormuz is impinging on the world economy. Again, creating more wealth for them in their oil industry. So either you wipe them out, take over Cargo Island or whatever it's called, knock out their ability to defend themselves, wipe them out completely. Be like, come on, man. Like, I'm in a heavyweight fight with Ali, and I'm Joe Frazier. I'm not throwing like kidney punches. I'm throwing punches to knock his jaw right off of his head. And when is it that you can't say, hey, you know what? We're the United States. We stand for morality, 1,000 points of light. We will bring light to that country. We will eliminate the evil devil that is the Ayatollah. If you want to call it nation building, call it what you will. We are going to impose freedom. That's what I call it. Have some guts. God damn it.
Tony, thanks for the phone call. Eduardo in Tampa, Florida. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, good evening, McGraw.
Good evening.
Yeah, I don't care how long it takes. I mean, we need to finish the job. You go in there, you got to finish the job, and we can absorb these gas prices. I know some people are getting nervous and all that, and I just saw a poll in Spanish because I got the Spanish news on, and it's in the 60s. I don't care what that poll says. We're in this. We got to finish this up. He should have. I think what the president does is telegraph too much what he's going to do. He needs to talk about what he does after he does. He not do a preview of what he's going to do. I mean,
let me ask you this question: we can absorb these gas prices. How many casualties can we absorb?
Oh, that's definitely out of the question. But
that is the question. If you want to go in and finish the job, you're going to have to put boots on the ground, and that means casualties. So how many casualties? We can absorb $4 a gallon of gas for a while and $5 a gallon for diesel. But how many casualties are you willing to put up with?
Yeah, something like special operations, like what everybody's talking about with Carg Island. I mean, that's different. But as far as like in the streets, like street-to-street fighting in Tehran, definitely out of the question. Yeah, but something special like a Carg Island.
But Carg Island. I mean, you're putting troops right off the coast, and they have. There's been we've had experts on the show who said they probably booby-trapped the island. The drones can do more damage. It's an offensive position. It's a forward position. If they can't open up the Strait of Hormuz, how hard is it going to be to control that island? And I know they keep saying the Marines did it in Iwo Jima. When I heard that, my hair rised up on the back of my neck because that was one of the deadliest days in the history of American warfare. I don't want another Iwo Jima to take Carg Island. So,
right. Well, there's the bigger question right there is the Straits, because we're the U.S. and we got to open it up because it's not going to be NATO. That's for sure.
Well, again, if he leaves, he's signaling that if he just declares victory, it's over, we're finished, we're going home, and the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, he's signaling to the world that he either doesn't want to open it up or he can't open it up. And so even though we've decimated them, it's a bit of a stalemate because they're still standing and they still have control of the Strait of Hormuz.
And we look bad with Russia and China, the big two. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So it's again, from the very beginning, this was a sticky wicket, and it's a dangerous game, and he had to be able to thread the needle. And he's got to, quote unquote, negotiate a peace, but he also said he wanted unconditional surrender. He wanted to degrade the military. Well, he's done that. He wanted to degrade the uranium. Well, he did that, but he talked about going in and getting it. Regime change,
and I don't
all
want
of
to have
those
the son
things.
Of Khomeini in there. Yeah, I don't want to have the son of Khomeini. It's got to be somebody totally different than the son of Khomeini. That's terrible.
Yeah, so it's sort of he's everywhere and nowhere. And I'm not making a value judgment, and I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying that in 3 weeks, if the Strait of Hormuz isn't open, and he declares victory and goes home, Iran is going to claim victory. Because they've left, and the infidels have left, and they couldn't open up the Strait of Hormuz. So he's got himself in a bit of a sticky wicket. So we'll have to wait and see how it all turns out.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Straits
Yeah.
is the big one right there. Probably more than anything else. Yeah, the Straits is the big one.
Eduardo, I thank you for your conversation.
Thank you very much.
You got it. Have a good night. All right, 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262, 1-844-262-4729. I almost gave out my cell phone number. 1-844-2-McGraw, 1-844-262-4729. From the text line, your program is always interesting. Enjoy the stories, latest book authors, and talk. And then here's another one. Your show is always informative, concise, and easy on the ears. Thank you. I stay up till 1 to hear it, a KDKA listener in Pennsylvania. Thank you very much. Very nice of you to say. Here's one from Missouri. Hey, McGraw, NATO countries have spent more, but Trump is asking for actions, not money. Yes, Donald Trump is asking for actions. Again, it's they might, who knows? But NATO is a defensive organization, not an offensive organization. And he hasn't, if he wanted NATO's help, he should have asked for NATO's help. He should have asked for their, as part of a coalition of the willing, a NATO force to let's once and for all solve this Iran problem. Let's go in together. He didn't want to do the legwork. He wanted to go in and do it himself with him and Netanyahu. So he didn't want NATO's help going in. Now he wants NATO's help getting out. Again, probably would have been a better way to go about getting NATO's help than the way he's doing it, threatening to leave and or threatening. But Donald Trump doesn't really do nuance, if you will. 1-844-262-4729. 1-844-262-4729. We got another one here. I've got a good one here. Let me get this one out. This one's from Virginia. In regards to birthright citizenship and the segment and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, would not reasonably apply to someone who was born in the U.S. and did not reach an age within the country to be reasonably subject to its laws. Ergo, it would be unreasonable to charge an infant with any penalty of law as an adult, adolescent, or toddler may be subject. So I think they're saying because it's a child, they're not subject to the laws because they're an infant. And an infant can't steal a car, therefore they're not subject to the laws. Should have called up John Sauer. Probably should have made the argument today. That's an interesting one. So diplomats aren't subject to the law and babies aren't subject to the law because they don't break the law. So they're not a citizen until they break the law. So when does the law apply to a baby? When the baby grows up to 5 and steals candy from the candy store? 10 and steals a car? $10.50. Sorry. It's not $10.50. It is, though, America at Night. Back in a moment.
Miss a portion of tonight's show? Not a problem. Go to americaatnightlive.com to find a replay of every show. Join the conversation. Call 844-2-McGraw. America at Night with McGraw Milhaven.
All right, a couple of texts and we'll finish up here. From this one's, where is this from? Illinois. Trump promised the Iranian people that he was going to take out their murderous and oppressive government. So Trump lied to those people. They kept protesting and dying in hopes of what Trump told them. Shame on you, Trump. Just hold on a second. Where did it go? Oh, yeah. Shame on you, Trump. You went back on your word of those oppressed Iranians. And then this one came in. This is clearly the text of the day. This is from my mom. She texted in, "You are the best. Thank you for who you are and for all you do for us." Thanks, Mom. Joking. Mom passed away a couple of years ago. It's going to be a chapter in the book, too. All right, that's going to do it for us. We are officially out of time, and my voice officially made it through to the end of the show. I'm going to take my elderberries and my lemon and my honey and my tea. I feel fine. I just losing my sore throat. I think I have a classic head cold. With all that being said, we are officially out of time. Busy night. Lots of moving pieces tonight. I want to thank everybody who made sure we got President Trump's remarks on so that everybody could hear them. We had Ryan Probst on from the Defense of Democracies. We had Dr. David Alexander, who was the Rice professor, to talk about the Artemis II. And, of course, Greg Willard, who was nice enough to join us, St. Louis University Law School professor and the former President Ford's White House attorney. That's a day. A lot of news. Holy mackerel. We got a Holy Thursday tomorrow. We got Good Friday on Friday. Easter's on Sunday. Spring is right around the corner. Thanks for putting up with me. Our executive director has been Alex Hinton. Our engineer tonight is Richard Good. I'm McGraw Milhaven. Thanks for putting up with me and my voice. This is America at Night on Westwood One.